On the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis. So yesterday we had a long brisa, almost the whole Amud, and the issue was, what's the source that Yibum doesn't override Arayas? Of course, it's always going to be overriding the issue of Eshesach, because he's always going to be Miyabim, his brother's wife, which is a Chiv Koris. But the question was other Arayas. Now Mishnah had 15, and the Gemara brought a source. How do you know? The Gemara started Nani Mili, and it brought the drasha of Isha Allah Chosalo Sikach Litzror Aleha Yevamos Yabba Aleha. There's a drasha to say that if there's going to be an issue of erva, his brother married his daughter. So if the wife falls even it's his daughter, so he can't marry his daughter. So Yibum does not override. And the Gemara brought a pasuk. So now starts the sugya. Why do you need a pasuk? We know it on our own also. Even without a pasuk, we would know that Yibum is not going to override Arayas. And that's how the Gemara starts. Time with the Kasav Rachmana Aleha, Allah Pachi Yavamena, Achos Isham Yabemes. If not for the pasuk Aleha, this drasha we did before, we would have thought that relative. Here the case is Achos Isha. That's what the pasuk is talking about. A wife's sister, Achos Isha. If his two brothers had married two sisters, right, then it would be a question of marrying his wife's sister. You think that it would also override, the Yibum would override that erva? Why should that be? Why should you have thought so? Why do you need a pasuk of Allah? We would have known that there's an avera. You can't do an avera. You would have thought that we didn't say the asiyah say v'dachilosa say. That's what you would have thought. That the regular rule, as we're going to go into now, that's going to be a big sugya now. That I say that if you have a clash between the positive commandment and a negative commandment, in order to fulfill the positive commandment, you have to transgress a negative commandment. Which one wins? So there's a klal that the commandment, the positive commandment, overrides the negative commandment. But the question is going to be that doesn't override a big negative commandment. It's a regular negative commandment. But if it would be something which is very chamor, like here it's going to be koris, there are some averis that are just a plain negative commandment. Sometimes it says it's a punishment of heavenly death and worse. Sometimes capital punishment, the earthly punishment. So when do we say this rule that a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment? That's only if it's a regular negative commandment. The lo saseh grade, the grade that means alone, that's all it is. But lo saseh ish b'koros midachi, is it able to override a very severe negative commandment that is a chiv koris? Here, achos isha, if someone has relations with his wife's sister, that's a, even if she's not married, nothing to do with eshes ish, just the fact that it's his wife's sister, there's a chiv koris. And we don't find that a positive commandment can override such a big negative commandment. So, in short, the question is, so why do you need a pasuk? The whole Gemara before brought a pasuk, the tzror, a drasha to say that Yibum doesn't override this Isser of Arayas. Of course it doesn't, even without a pasuk. Who would ever think that the mitzvah of Yibum is a positive commandment to do Yibum? You think it's going to override such a severe negative commandment of Koris? So that's the question. This question now, it's one of the very unique sugis in Shas, that this sugya goes on for five pages. The question is going to take about 2 pages, and then there's going to be another 3 pages for the answer. So you have to hold your breath to get to the end of the kasha. The kasha is really over, but the Gemara takes the opportunity here to go into the sugya deeply, into the sugya of asiyah say dechalos, just to show a second on the daf. We're on daf Gimel Amud Beis. So this is daf Daled Amud Aleph, daf Daled Amud Beis, daf Hey Amud Aleph. Shouldn't have that. And then goes daf Hey Amud Aleph. And then the affair with Beis, and here the Gemara ends off the kasha again. It comes to the same place we're holding right now. Ashkan dasi asay v'dachilosa asay greda losa asay sheish b'kor asay ashkan dedachi d'isra chalel meisra. That's like where the Gemara comes back to the kasha that we're holding now. In between, we have a long sugya, 2 daf, that's going to talk about the sugya asay dechilosa asay. We would have, if the Gemara wanted to shorten it, they could have skipped all that. In fact, the answer is going to be another 3 daf after that. So if somebody goes away for a week and he comes back, he didn't lose anything in yevamos. Means yevamos, it's not going to be about yevamos now. We're going to be 5 pages now, 5 days. It's not going to be about yevamos. It's a sugya. I heard even that in some yeshivas, they learned this alone. It's like an insert. you could take it out and let's learn the sugya. Say you have 5 daf of Asay Dechalosa. Say you could do that. But we're here, so this is our cruise. We're going on a cruise now off the subject of yevamos. We're going into Asay Dechalosa. So we start. So the Gemara on the bottom said that we always know that Asay Dechalosa say that a positive commandment overrides a regular negative commandment, a plain negative commandment. But if it's a negative commandment that's correct, we don't find such a thing. And also, we're now going to go into the source. First, we just said that it seems we know always, whenever you find this concept, we always find it only used, the application is always used in a plain negative commandment, not a serious one. And also the source that we learn it out from, we're going to see that also is a regular plain negative commandment. Lo sasek redim and all the dachi. Where do we learn out? What's the source that I say lo sasek? How do you know that a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment? Tichsiv, because it says in Parshas Kiseitze, Lo silbashat neis gedilim tasalacha. Over there, it's really 2 psukim, and even has a hefsek in between. Lo silbashat neis temu peshtim yachdav. That's this, not to wear shatnez. You're not allowed to wear a garment that has wool and linen. That's this of shatnez. Then the next pasuk starts. Gedilim tasalacha alabakan fos. You should put tzitzis on your garment if it has four corners of the garment. And the Gemara is going to say that it says shatnez right next to the mitzvah of tzitzis to learn out that the mitzvah of tzitzis, which is a positive commandment, it overrides the issur of shatnez. If they come in clash, there's a conflict between tzitzis and shatnez, tzitzis wins. What will be the case? That if you have the tzitzis, we're going to say the tzitzis has tchelis also. Tzitzis could be different materials, but tchelis, the blue string that's supposed to be on the tzitzis, is made out of wool. It doesn't. The word tchelis, nowadays the word tchelis means blue, but it doesn't really mean the color blue. It means blue-colored wool. Tchelis means dafka blue-colored wool. And the mitzvah to have tchelis is dafka to have the blue-colored wool. And if you have a garment that's made out of linen, you have to put the tzitzis of the wool. So you have wool and linen. You tie on the tzitzis. So it's connected, the wool and the linen. And do you do that? Is the mitzvah of tzitzis going to override the 4 corner, the issur to have shatnez? Someone has a 4 corner garment of linen, so he's supposed to put on tzitzis, but he says, if I put on tzitzis, I'm wearing shatnez. So yes, the tzitzis overrides. And that's going to be the source of Asay Dechalosa Asay. And then in 2 pages further, we're going to end off the kasha, let out our breath. I have to figure out that you don't find this concept only by regular losa say. Shatnez is a regular losa say. It's not chorus. It's
tzitzis that we're wearing is wool.
The tzitzis strings are wool. Nowadays they don't manufacture only even the white strings. They just make them to be wool. It could be halachically if you have a cotton garment, you can have tzitzis, but they don't make them. They only make wool tzitzis, and the tchelis has to be wool. There's no such thing as tchelis that's not wool. That's not wool. So if you have a linen garment, which you don't sell nowadays, they can't get a linen garment. You don't get linen garments in anything. They come out, don't sell. And in Islam, they don't. In the world, it's not so popular anymore.
The whole thing is wool with wool.
When you buy wool, you buy cotton and wool tzitzis. They sell either cotton or they sell wool garments. Those are the 2 choices. Tzitzis is always wool. But the kid says that if you have a linen garment and you have to put on tzitzis, which are tchelis, you do it. That means I say the chalosa say, and the Gemara is going to end off the kasha 2 pages later. So it's only a case of a regular losa say. It's not losa say sheish b'kares. That's what the Gemara wants to get to. But now we're going to go into the sugya of asay the chalosa say before we let out the kasha. So how do you know asay the chalosa say? How do you know that a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment? Because it says don't wear shatnez, and right next to it says wear tzitzis. How do you learn out? From where do you know that we darshan smuchim? There's a drash in the Torah, in the drash world. If there are 2 things next to each other, so the drash says that you could put the proximity, the fact that they're right next to each other, allows you to say there's some connection. Here it says don't wear shatnez, wear tzitzis. So the power of the drash called smuchim, that we darshan things that are next to each other. So that tells you that to make a drasha. And here we're going to learn out that tzitzis override shatnez. How do you know that? How do you know that we're permitted to darshan smuchim, that the Torah was written in a way that you should darshan the proximity of 2 psukim? Shenema smuchim la'ada'olam ma'asum ye'emes v'yasher. Spam shedrash. This pasuk in Tehillim is talking about that the Torah is very steadfast, that the words of the Torah are smuchim. Smuchim means you can lean on it forever, and they're made in truth and in uprightness. But the more saying a drash that the word smuchim doesn't mean to lean on, it means that they're close to each other. Smuchim la'ada'olam. The fact that the Torah is asui memes v'yasher, that the proximity of the psukim means something. The Torah didn't just put different halachas next to each other without any order. The fact that it's next to each other, that's saying you should understand there's something deeper. And that's the drash that you learn. Smuchim, and we're happy that we know that tzitzis overrides shatnez. Before we go further, the Gemara throws in another case of smuchim, which is not negated to us. It happens to be something about yevamos, but it's not relative to us sugya of asay decholos asay. I put in parentheses just to point out that it's not the real sugya over here. We're going to come back to it later on. There's going to be a mention of this because it has to do with yibum. But we're not in the sugya of yibum now. We're in the sugya of asay decholos asay. From Rav Sheshes Amar Rav Elazar Mishum Rav Elazar ben Azariah, in line the yevamos shnafla l'fnei mukashchin shein chos menasa. What if the wife of the deceased man, she now is supposed to be married to her brother-in-law, her husband, her deceased husband's brother, but he happens to be full of boils, mukashchin. He's like a disgusting, he has a disgusting disease, and she doesn't want to marry him. So you don't force her. You don't force her to be married to him. Right over there, Parashas Kisei, where it says that in the din of Yibum, one of them dies without children, so he should, the brother should marry his wife. So over there it says, right next to it, and before that it says, Lo sachsom shabbat. Don't muzzle the ox when it is threshing. And there, the word lo sachsom means also that you're forcing it. It talks about that. Don't force it. So here also, don't force the woman. Don't force the woman that she should be given to the brother-in-law who's discussing disease.
Okay. He doesn't have this son. She doesn't want to marry.
So that's a question. Right. So Moshe is asking that here it talks about mukashchin. But some she doesn't like him. It's not my taste. So it's not so simple. It isn't simple. Later on, there's going to be a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos if any other excuse that she finds that she doesn't want to marry him. But it seems like it has to be an excuse. But when a woman gets married, she has to realize that she's obligating herself to her husband, and in case he dies, also to the brother. When she gets married, she should be told that in case the far chance that he dies without children, so she has to be ready to be married. And if not, and they need to get them. It could be there's machlokes later on about the sugya. We'll get to it deeper then. But it's not so simple that she just could say that she doesn't want, because that's what she meant when she got married. That's what's included. Yeah. Okay, but that's a side subject. It's not a subject now. We're just another example of smuchim. How do we know it? Because the fact that the pasuk says these two halachas next to each other, it says lo sachsim shabadisha right next to kiyesh v'achim yachtav, to say that you don't force the woman in case he's a mukashkin. But back to the subject, that was only a side issue. Back to the subject that we darshan smuchim, we kadash, we're eligible, or we're supposed to take the proximity of the psukim and say that it says don't wear shatnez. Wear tzitzis, that you wear tzitzis even if it overrides shatnez, even in the case where it comes to clash with tzitzis. The Gemara goes at length now to bring in a new subject, not a new subject, but a new opinion. There's an opinion that doesn't darshan smuchim. This thing we say that you're allowed to darshan two psukim next to each other, and the proximity means something. Not so simple. Rav Yehuda, of this Monday, we're going to come up Rav Yehuda, the Tana Rav Yehuda, that he doesn't hold of smuchim. He doesn't hold of his drasha, but sometimes he does, and the Gemara is going to say that even he also agrees to the drasha that tzitzis overrides shatnez. From Rav Yosef, the Gemara doesn't really need it. If he doesn't hold it, he doesn't hold of it. But the Gemara wants to say that even Rav Yehuda also holds of it. Even the one that in the whole Torah he doesn't darshan the proximity of sukkim, the Mishnah Torah dorish, and Sefer Dvarim, that's called Mishnah Torah, where the Torah is repeated. Many mitzvahs are repeated over there. So over there he also agrees, and this pasuk that we mentioned on the top line. It says on the side, the Dvarim Chav says in Parashas Kisei. That's Mishnah Torah. So even you also would agree to that drasha. And now he goes at length to show that Rav Yehuda does not darshan it, does not darshan smuchim in the whole Torah. And then it's going to show that he does darshan it in Mishnah Torah. And we're going to say he also is going to agree to this drasha that sits over right shatnez. Rav Yehuda b'alma lo dorish, Mishnah Torah dorish. How do you know that he doesn't darshan all over? We're going on a cruise, different subjects altogether. You come out of this daf, you know a lot of information over the whole Torah. How do you know that Yehuda does not darshan proximity in psukim other places, like it says here, Shmos. This is going to be something to say for Shmos. Over there, he's not going to darshan it. What happens over there? It says that a sorceress should not be let to live. A sorcerer also, but here it talks about Machashefa, that you don't let her live, she dies. She's supposed to be killed. But it doesn't say which kind of death. Which death penalty is someone who does sorcery, which death penalty are they chayiv? So Ben Azai says, it says Mechashefa lo sechayeh. Right next to it, right next to it, it says anybody that has relations with an animal, a sexual relationship with an animal, is supposed to be put to death. And over there, we know that it's skila. There's a drasha that that's stoning. The way that they killed someone that has relationships with an animal is stoning. And the fact that it says it right next to each other, these two psukim, tells us the proximity. It's dashning proximity. Another case of proximity. Since it says these two mitzvahs next to each other, it's coming to teach you that the same death penalty for sexual relationship with an animal is also going to be for a sorceress. Some Indian though, it put it next to each other. Just like the death penalty for someone who has sexual relationships with an animal is going to be stoning, so too Machashef also is killed by stoning. But Rabbi Yehuda did not accept that. Here's Rabbi Yehuda. He's going to say smuchim, that's not enough. Because the person next to each other, the proximity is not enough reason to dash that a skila. Say it's different Russia to tell us that. A different Russia to tell you that it's Baskila because over here only two specific types of witchcraft, of sorcery, and over there it says openly that it's Baskila. So too, it's like if you have a generality, and then one specific thing is pointed out, something about it, it refers to the whole general rule. So here, over Yidoni, two kinds of kishuf, and over there it says openly that it's skila, so too. What do you see so far? That the Yehuda is not satisfied. He doesn't darshan smuchim in Sefer Shmos. But now we're going to show that he himself does darshan smuchim in Mishnah Torah. In Mishnah Torah, the Darash, how do you know that he does darshan the proximity of psukim in Sefer Devarim? The Tanakh Mishnah says, "No siyadam anusas aviv u'mufutas aviv anusas b'no mufutas b'no." Tanakh says that a person is allowed to marry a woman that had relations with his father out of marriage. Means that his father raped a woman, or he seduced a woman, but not in marriage. He didn't marry her. It doesn't become. It's like his father's wife. A father's wife is asatar. That's arayas. A person is not allowed to marry his father's wife, even after he divorces or he dies. A person cannot marry his father's wife, even if it's not his mother. There's a father's wife. But how about if it wasn't his wife, but he had relations with her out of marriage? Not a marital, just he had sexual relations without marriage. Then Tanakh says that it's not also to the son. The son is allowed to marry her. The son would be allowed to marry a woman that his father raped or a woman that his father seduced. Also, the son, anusas b'no, mfutas b'no, that a father would be allowed to marry a woman that his son raped or seduced. Rabbi Yehuda also anusas aviv mfutas aviv. We passed like Tanakh by the way. Rabbi Yehuda argues on one point. He argues on the father. The son he agrees to. Anusas b'no, mfutas b'no. He agrees that the father would be allowed to marry the raped woman or seduced woman of his son. But the other way, he has said that it's also to have relations with a woman that the father had relations out of marriage. How does he know that? We're going to go into the drasha. We're going to come out that it comes out with smuchim. Just to point out that we passed on Tanakh that it is mutter. So there are a lot of issues in the Torah that you see that, and it explains it. That Ruvain, that had relations with Bilhah in the Pashup Shat, it could be that it wasn't Asim, it wasn't called Eishes of it. If it wasn't Pilagish, it wasn't Mamash. Also, Avshalom, that had relations with the 10 Pilagshim of his father, it wasn't Mamash Eishes of it. And there's other cases also. There's another case that it explains that it wouldn't be Eishes of it. I forgot, there was another case also. But that's how we pass it, that it would be mutter to have relations if it was out of marriage. Also, Adoniyahu, he wanted to marry Avishag. Ashunamis. Also, it wouldn't have been. He was not married to her. David wasn't married to her, so it would have been permitted. And you see that there's no problem that he should have been married to her. Just some Melech saw that he's gonna take over the kingship, but it wouldn't have been us. So that's how we pass that anusa sabim, futa sabim, or not, or anything out of marriage, as long as it wasn't eisha sabim, it'll be permissible for the son to have relations. But anyway, back to the sugya.
Didn't have any relations with the
Right. And he didn't marry her. It wasn't a marriage. But anyway, back to the subject. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's also. Where does he know that it's also from? From where does he get that it's also to have relations with someone who the father, it also to marry someone who the father had relations with even out of marriage? Tichsiv, a pasuk in Devarim, back to Devarim again. It says that a person should not take the wife of his father. It's also to have relations with the wife of his father. But then the pasuk says more. He should not uncover the garment of his father. The pasuk is that he shouldn't, the garment, that means that his father had relations with somebody, that's called that he uncovers. So he shouldn't uncover the garment that his father uncovered. He shouldn't have relations with his father's wife. But it says, it's extra pasuk. It says already. It says not to marry the father's wife. Why does it say again, and he says, any garment, which any woman that he had relations with, even if it wasn't through marriage, also the son should not have relations with that woman. But how do you see it's talking about? The Gemara is not happy. The words alone, if the Gemara doesn't see that should mean Anusa Saviv, a raped woman or a seduced woman by his father. Umimayda Anusa Ksiv. How do we know that it's talking about such a woman? From the pasuk before that, the Ksiv. If you look on the side, it says here, Dvarim Chav Gimel, Dvarim Chav Beis. This is the pasuk before. It's the last parak, the last pasuk of Parak Chav Beis, and the first pasuk of Parak Chav Gimel. It says right before that about a man who raped somebody. Not about a father or anything. It says right before that a man who raped somebody has to pay. He raped a woman, not a married woman. He raped an unmarried woman. He has to pay a large sum of money. Right after that, it says, so we learn out from the smuchim that it's talking about the father, the case that it says, also a woman that the father had raped, the son should not have relations with him. Rabbanan argue, the more goes on to, that's already we saw that he does hold a smuchim. That's what the Gemara wanted to prove, that even Rabbi Yehuda, who before in Sefer Shmos, he didn't say, he said, he wasn't happy to darshan smuchim in Sefer Shmos, but he himself now in Sefer Dvarim does darshan it. So we see he darshans smuchim, and therefore back to the top when it says lo yisil b'shatnes g'dilim tasalacha, Rabbi Yehuda is also going to agree that in Sefer Dvarim he darshan smuchim and tzitzis overrides shatnes. The Gemara just finishes off that the Rabbanan who say that it's mutter to marry a anusa savit, the rape of someone who had the father had relations with. Don't they dash in this pasuk? Rabbanan also dash in smuchim. You have a samach like the garment. If it would have been immediately following one another, then it would have been true. Hashta the lo samach le. We can read the parentheses if it's the right guess or not, because it's true. In between, it says something. It says the way the pasuk goes is it says some more about that, then it says so the is interrupting before the pasuk that says so it's not mamish next to each other. Till now we dashed in proximity that is mamish immediate proximity, but here there's something in between. So therefore they say a different drasha, and we're not going to go into it, but the Gemara says they learned that the pasuk is not talking about Anusa Zaviv. Anusa Zaviv is mutter for the son to marry. But they're talking about if the father's brother died and that woman is now obligated to his father to have yibum, if the son would take her, would have relationships with her, besides that the halach is that she's not supposed to marry out of yibum, that's called yevamos l'shuk, that she married out of yibum, and also happens to be his aunt. If it's his father's brother's wife, even after death, it's still an aunt, and it will be a chayiv course on that count. It's also going to be another avera that he took knaf aviv, knaf aviv. Wanted to say more averas besides the averas that are there already. It's also another avera, but they say it's not talking about anusa aviv. If the father had relationships, that wouldn't be a reason to be asur. What did the Gemara say so far? That the Asay Dachalosa is learned from tzitzis override shatnez because of the smuchim, and even Rabbi Yehuda, the dashin smuchim always, like you see in Sefer Shmos by Mechashefa, he wasn't happy to say that that's the reason that Mechashefa is chayiv skila because it's next to Kol Shechevim Be'ema, but he himself does dashin smuchim in Sefer Dvarim, and like you find that he says that Anusa Saviv is asur because it says the parsha of Lo Yigaleh Knaf Aviv right next to the parsha of Anusa. So you see that he himself holds of smuchim and sefer dvarim. He's also going to agree to that rash on top of the page that sits over right shatnez. The Gemara now goes that the Gemara doesn't take it simple that if it's in sefer dvarim you do smuchim. The Gemara is not going to say that. The Gemara says because there's something special about it. Of Mishnah Torah, my time with the Dorish. How come? Tosfos says that. Where's the Tosfos? 1 second. Where's that? V'hada Amar, the Mishnah Torah Dorish, who adin be'alma ella the Mishnah Torah kimlei dekula muchach mufna v'lochash lahavi ella echad mehem. That even though the Gemara so far sounds that the reason why there's a difference between Sefer Dvarim and everything else, that's what the words seem to say. Sefer Dvarim, Mishnah Torah is different than everything else. But not a Gemara doesn't take it like that. No, I didn't mean that. I meant to say that the ones that are in Sefer Dvarim happen to have something unique about them, and that's the reason why Yehuda agrees to the drash, and that's going to be the rest of the daf today, that there's something unique about the Psukim and Dvarim that are more reason to dash and smuchim. That's the rest of the Gemara for today. And what are we going to come out after the day? That for that, whatever reason it is, there's uniqueness of Sefer Devarim over here, but these psukim, Rabbi Yehuda himself is going to hold of smuchim, and Mamela, but the first drash on top of the pasuk, he's going to agree that Shanis is that sisters override Shanis. That's as far as we're going to get today. But there's a lot more to do still. But that's where we're going to end up.
That's where we end up. That really the Devarim is different than the
Right. But Taisa says not inherently because it's Devarim, because everything in the Devarim happens to be that it's going to have one of these two issues coming up. The Gemara is going to explain what's unique about Sefer Devarim. And since this is also like that, it's going to fit the bill. It's also going to have you're going to dash in smuchim and by tzitzis also that it overrides Shanis. So the Gemara starts in a second wide line. Over Mishnah Torah, my timer, the Dorish. How come he does dash in the Mishnah? Why is the Sefer Devarim different? So the Gemara says two reasons. Either the reason is because it's evident. The Gemara is going to say what evident means. Evident means that from the way the Torah wrote it, it's evident that something has to be dashed over here. There's something wrong, something outstanding, something's fishy, so to speak. Something's the fact that it's not. The Gemara is going to say that's not written in this place. It's out of context. Good, thank you. And Iboy Sema Mishum the Mufti. Mufti means that it's extra pasuk, that it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary pasuk. Iboy, and how the Gemara is going to explain why. So first, the Gemara is going to talk about this second list. Rashi we spoke about the smuchim of Anusa Saviv. The fact that it says that parsha about having relations with the father's wife and something about having relations, something about the father's relation. So it's going to be. There's a reason why it's evident or extra. The word muchach means that it's evident, and the word mufti means that it's extra. It's vacant. It's available. That's why we're going to dash over there the smuchim to say that it's talking similar to the parsha next to it, which is talking about anusa. One reason you can say the reason why Mishnah Torah is different is because it's evident. What's evident? If you just want the simple pshat that it's talking about relations with the father's wife, so it should have been someplace else. It should have been where it talks about arise. Why is it here in the middle of the subject? It's out of context. Over there, it's not talking about the issue of different relationships. It's talking about raping. It's talking about those that are not allowed to marry into Am Yisrael. It isn't the subject to talk about arise over there. So since it's out of context, that's the reason why it's more reason to darshan. There's also the fact that it's extra. You don't need the pasuk at all. It should have been enough just to say that he shouldn't marry his father's wife. What does it have to say? Why does it say the second half of the pasuk that he shouldn't uncover the garment that his father had uncovered? So it's also extra pasuk. That's a reason. Why do you need the pasuk? Well, that's a reason why you can learn out that it's standing to darshan, and the drash is going to be smuchim to say it's talking about anusa. Shamina, lovely. And that's the pshat. The reason Rabbi Yehuda says Mishnah Torah is different is because in Mishnah Torah and Sefer Devarim, the psukim over there are either going to be evident or they're going to be extra, and therefore you dash the smuchim. And the rest of the page now is going to go back to the first issue, which is on top of the Amun Aleph, that tzitzis overrides shatnez. You also have to show it if you want to say. No one's forcing us to say it, but if you want to say, Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that Yadash and Smuchim over there and tzitzis override shatnez, you have to show how come it's either muchach or mufni, that the psukim that it says in the parsha of shatnez and tzitzis, something's over there evident that it doesn't sound a place or that it's extra. And that's going to be the rest of the page. That's parsha of tzitzis that it says something's evident over there or that is extra. What's it doing here? It's not in context. It should have been put in Parsha Shlach where it talks about tzitzis. It should have said, and it doesn't belong here in the middle of Parsha's Kiseitza. What does it say there for? That's evident that it's supposed to darshan it, and you darshan the smuchem that is override shatnez. The rest of the page is going to talk about this point that it's extra. There's something extra over there, and the fact that it's extra, that's going to be the reason why we're allowed to darshan it. Why is it extra? Mechtig, Siv. Taisa says that the pasuk of tzitzis is not extra, and he says why the psukim we do need it. But the Gemara is going to say the psukim of shatnez. Mechtig, Siv. Kasav. This is in Vayikra. We know already that they're not allowed to wear shatnez. The fact that you're not allowed to wear wool and linen together, that's another pasuk. And Kedoshim, that a garment that has a crossbreed of wool and linen, doesn't say wool and linen, but it says a crossbreed of garment should not come upon you. So why does it have to say again over here in Devarim, lo still bashatnez? Normally, why does that say this pasuk is extra? That's what we're talking about. So this pasuk of L'shlu b'shatneis is extra. That's the reason why it's extra, and by extra psukim, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you could dash and smooth. Now the Gemara is going to go back and forth asking kashas on that. Is it true? Is it true that it's not necessary? The Gemara is attacking that you do need the pasuk. You want that it shouldn't say L'shlu b'shatneis. Ikas v'chmana lo yala alecha have amena kol derech Allah asa rachmana v'afilu marchik sus. Chas v'chmana lo l'shlu b'shatneis. Tumid de levisha this ba'ana that if you only have the pasuk of Beged Kalayim Shadnez Lo Yala Alecha, it says that a garment that's mixed, a mixed garment, should not come upon you. I would have taken it very extreme, that you're not allowed, it's not allowed to come upon you at all. Lo Silbashis means don't wear it. Wearing it is different than coming upon you. You would have thought, like it says, like the Gemara says, that anything that goes on you will be yasser, and even a person who's selling a garment, a salesman, he wants to sell a garment, so he's not doing it for wearing. He's doing it in order to show people how it looks. He's not doing it for the purpose of wearing. And that the Gemara says is not considered shatnez. If it would say that's lo yala alecha, I would have thought that's also wasa. Therefore, the pasuk says lo silbash. This word lo silbash means don't wear. That's the way you wear a garment. To tell you that only if it's similar to wearing, which means that there's no, you're benefiting from it. A person is just doing it in order to put it over his shoulders or something like that, in order to show people what it looks like, to carry it. That's not called hano aschimon. It's not that he's benefiting from it.
So a Jew could sell shatnez to claim.
He's to sell it is surely mutter. Surely can sell it. The only question is wearing it. Here he's wearing it in order to show it off. He's wearing it. Even that the Gemara says, Mutter says Atznuim, there's a chumrah not to wear it. But here it says there's some heter to wear it, not wearing the mamish. Maybe he's putting it over his shoulders, but he is benefiting of it. But it's not the regular way. So it's mutter. But surely it's not asabana. It's just that you're not allowed to wear it.
I think there is, if I remember correctly, there's some type of serious insult to pay, because then you might end up with me.
I think it does. I think it only says that if you can't tell, it's not noticeable that it's shatnez. If you can't tell that it's shatnez, it's not possible to inspect. Now they have shatnez inspection. What do they call it?
Yeah, laboratory.
Laboratory.
Yeah,
but if there's something that you wouldn't be able to tell, if it's in a part of the garment that it's not noticeable, so then don't sell it in a way that might come to a Jew. That the Jew is going to check it, and he's not going to find it. And make sure that it stays by somebody that knows that it's. I think it's all says Beged Shabbat Bakline. I think.
But to say that'd be a chiddush to say of it, but if you could find the truth,
What's good? Okay, whatever you think. Nowadays, nobody knows. I'll look at it and see that it's.
Right, they look at
they do, but what they inspect, I would imagine that it means that in the place where they inspect, but he's not going to inspect that part. They inspect the collar, they inspect the threads, whatever, but they don't inspect something in the middle of the garment. But don't take me so seriously. That's what I think. I think. But anyway, the Gemara is asking that. What are you telling me that the word that l'shlu b'shatnez is extra? It's not extra. He needed to tell you that it's only yasser if it's similar to wearing lil bash. The other pasuk says lo yala. Just look at the two psukim over here, just to highlight the difference between the two psukim. Maybe a different color over here, just to show. Here's lo yala, and here is lo silbash. So then we're saying that there's a big difference. If it only would say lo yala, I would think any kind of halal, it goes on you, it's usher. So it says lo silbash, to say it's only usher when it's similar to levisha, which means that it has anah. Also, the Gemara goes the other way. This is not negated to us right now, but if it only would have said lo silbash, also I would have taken it wrong. Because Rahman lo silbash, I would have thought it's only yasa to wear mamish. But if you're going to put it on you, just wrap it around you, put it on a blanket, whatever. You might have think that it's not the same, and it'll be mutter. Because Rahman lo yala lecha. That's why you have to have the other pasuk also. But we just finished the kasha. From all this was a kasha so far from Hanach Mitzvah Tzrichi. That how could you say that it's a extra pasuk? He said lafnuya. We said that over here in Devarim, the parsha of Shatnez is extra. Wool and linen. That's extra because we know already that the Isra of Shatnez, even though it says klayim just means a mixture. And like it says by animals also called klayim and vegetables and trees, everything's called klayim. The klayim just means a mixture. How do you know that it means wool and linen? Like more say, we know it already. The time the very small hold when I'm with the stamp godim, the breath of our cost of Bech Mehem Samuel Pishtim, I've called Samuel Pishtim. So Samuel Pishtim, because Rahman Alamali. The Gemara is answering that there is something extra. What's extra? The word Samuel Pishtim. Over here in Dvorim it says Samuel Pishtim, but you know it already anyway. This is already not so simple. Well, how do you know it anyway? The other pasuk says, "Uveged kalaim shatnez lo ya'ala alecha." This is the pasuk. Uveged kalaim shatnez lo ya'ala alecha. It doesn't say wool and linen. It just says you shouldn't wear a mixed garment. So how do you know that it means semer pishtim? But the Gemara is going to bring, we do know it because the word beged, there's going to be a drasha that says that the word beged kalaim shatnez, the word beged does mean wool and linen. Because who says so? Tana Rabbi Shmuel, he says, since over here, and in many places it says in the Torah, beged. It just says beged, but it doesn't specify what kind of beged. But in one place, it says, one place it does say that it means wool and linen. That's going. By Tzaras, in Parshas, it must be Tazriah. Over there it talks about if a nega comes onto a garment. Over there it says perish, wool or linen. Beged Semer or beged Pishtim. So it says over there that when it says beged, over there it specifies wool and linen. So we learn now, wherever it says the word beged, it means wool and linen. So if you know that already, that beged semer, beged kalaim shatnez lo ya'ala alecha, that it means wool and linen, so you don't need the pasuk over here in Devarim to specify semer pishtim. Semer pishtim because of one of lamali shmami nalaf nuyeh. So we're at a station again. It sounds good that the pasuk in Devarim is extra, but it says semer pishtim by shatnez. So since it's extra, you're entitled to learn the drasha of smuchim that tzitzis. It says next to shatnez to tell you that tzitzis override shatnez. But the Gemara doesn't give up. The Gemara is still attacking. Still, you do need the pasuk is not extra. We said before that levisha means you're wearing it. That's a big ano, and just putting it on you is not without wearing it is not a big ano. We said both of them. Also, one pasuk says lo yala, one pasuk says lo yilbash. But not Gemara is saying that the fact that it's limited, it's only also when it's wool and linen. Maybe that's where it says beged time shanas lo yala alecha. It's true. The word beged means wool and linen, but over there it says lo yala, and lo yala means that you're not mamush wearing it. Over there, maybe the Torah is, since it's not such a big honor to have the garment on you without wearing it. Over there, the Torah says only if it's going to be wool and linen. But if you're actually going to wear it, like a garment that you wear, you put your sleeves into it, you put your arms into it, as long as wearing it, maybe over there it's going to be also, even if it's any two types, not only wool and linen. That's why the pasuk has to say over here. How does it say? No, the other one. Lo silbash shatnez. Semo pishtim yachtav. Even when it's lo silbash, even when you're wearing it, also it's only yasser if it's wool and linen. Kasav Achman semo pishtim over here also.
That would be any two.
Yeah, maybe he's also only supposed to wear one type. Each garment should be one type. Not that you have to wear all your clothing, but each piece of clothing should not be a mixture. Right, there shouldn't be a shan. You might think that kalaim, a shatnez means a mixture. Kalaim is a mixture. So you might think so. So then maybe that's the reason why it's hard to say. So again, the Gemara is under attack. The Gemara is challenging. So it's not extra. You need all these psukim. If it's not extra, then you're not entitled to learn smuchim v'kontav Yehuda, even in Mishnah Torah. So you won't know that tzitzis overrides shatnez. But the Gemara says no. No, you would have been able to learn out, even though you have a svara that one is worse, that when you're wearing it, it's worse, more chomor than if you're not wearing it. But there would be the word shatnez here, the word shatnez over there, as we saw both psukim say shatnez. One pasuk says beged kalaim shatnez, and also the other one says lo silba shatnez. Both of them say the word shatnez. So we'd make gzera shava, and we'd be safe. We know that the isser is only when it's wool and linen, so you don't need the pasuk, and everything falls into place. That it's an extra pasuk. The word Samuel Pishtim is extra pasuk over there in Dvarim, and therefore you're entitled, even according to Yehuda, you're entitled to learn smuchim, and you're going to say that tzitzis overrides shatnez. There's one more piece to the end of the page, and it's in parentheses. It's like a sugya for itself. I don't mean parentheses that you cross it out, but it's like a sugya for itself. It's not in the it's not in the line of what we're talking about. This kasha is like it's really, even though it's in parentheses, so to speak, but the Gemara is like really like a new kasha out of no place. That not out of no place. I mean, like it's a big kasha arises.
So we finished with smuchim now?
We finished. No, there's not to go on. So not a Shabbos will continue.
Okay.
But at this point, this is going to. Today was the Avdalah. What's this going to be now? Tomorrow, the kasha is going to be over tomorrow, halfway through. That's when the kasha is going to be over. But we're still doing our Seidah Chalosase. But now the Gemara says, come to think of it, from all the things that you're telling me. I have a source that I say the Cholosa, I say that tzitzis override shatnez without the whole thing. Forget about everything you told me. Erase everything. I could tell you a simple source that tzitzis override shatnez. The time of Rabbi Shmuel, time of the Kasav Achman, the Semel Pishtim, Allah Pachi Kalaim Tzitzis Havamina the Asur Achmana. Your whole Rashi just told me that Semel Pishtim is extra because it says already beged. Beged means Semel Pishtim, and here it says Semel Pishtim again. It's extra. That's what you have. You need that in order to have a source that it says it next to Dilim Tasalacha, it says next to the parsha of Shatnez. Without that, everything's very simple now. If not for that, you would have thought that it's also to wear tzitzis when you have Shatnez. V'aksiv, v'asu lehem tzitzis, al kanfei v'gdeim, v'tan dvei Bishmol, kol begadim semu pishtimein, v'am rachman, avid leitchelas, utchelas imru. The pasuk says, what did we just say? Before we just talked about the beggar of Shatnez. What kind of beggar is Shatnez asa? So we said beggar means semu pishtim. But you should know by tzitzis also says the word beggar. Don't forget, by tzitzis it says, v'asu lehem tzitzis, al kanfei v'gdeim, this word, v'gdeim. It says, put tzitzis on the corners of your bigadim. What's bigadim? Which bigadim? Which begadim is that by tzitzis? So the same Rabbi Shmuel that said that always it says beged, we don't know what it is. In one place by Nagoim, by Tzaras, begadim, over there it says beged, sema beged pishtim. So whenever it says the word, it means sema pishtim. So before we talk about shanis, now we're talking about tzitzis. What kind of begadim needs tzitzis? So he says that the word beged means sema pishtim. So what comes out that a person who has a garment made out of wool or a garment made out of linen has to put on tzitzis, and tzitzis is tchelas. And that tchelas is wool. So back to, if you have a garment made out of pishtim, you have to put on tzitzis. Torah says so. Torah says that if you have a garment, meaning wool or linen, and then it says put on tchelas, and tchelas is wool. So if you have a linen garment, you have to put on wool and tchelas. So that means you're wearing shanas. Isn't that enough? Forget about the whole smuchim. Forget about that. It says a beged, which means wool or linen, has to have tzitzis. Tzitzis means also tchelas. Tchelas is wool. So you're putting on wool and tchelas onto a garment of pishtan. So you see that it overrides. Isn't that simple? Then why does it finishes off? The kasha, you have to prove to me that tchelas is wool. Maybe tchelas is not wool. How do you know that tchelas is wool? With the sheish kitna, tchelas imru. Because it says, when it talks about the big dekuna, so it says, tchelas agom antol hashani, v'sheish. Sheish means linen. If it says all those other kinds of garments, and then it says sheish, that's linen, that means that tchelas is not linen. So tchelas is going to be, for some reason the Gemara says, if it's not linen, then it's wool. Now, nothing else that comes into the category. Those are the two kinds of begadim. And if it's not going to be wool, linen, it's going to be wool. So the Gemara knows that tchelas means blue wool, and you put it onto a beged made out of pishtan. So don't you see that tzitzis overrides shatnez? The more answers, it's true. You do need it. It's necessary to have the first drasha. What was the first drasha at the beginning of Amar Aleph? That Loislo Bashanez, Semo Pishtim, Gedilim Tasalacha, Smuchim, with an extra lafnuye, because just to say short what the Gemara is going to say, more or less the Gemara is going to say that even though the Torah says to put on tchelas, maybe there's going to be some nuance that's going to tell us only put on tchelas when it's a wool beged. Even though you have to put on tchelas, and it says that a beged of pishtim or wool is chayv in tzitzis, but when it says tchelas, that you pull out the blue wool, maybe it's only going to be when you have a beged out of tzemer, beged of wool. But if you have a beged out of pishtan, then let's put tzitzis of pishtan, don't put any wool. You might have thought that.
We said that because it means automatically.
Yeah, but then when it says put on tchelas,
right,
it's true. But beged means wool or linen. But then when it says to put on tchelas, it's only talking about when you have a woolen beged. But if you have a linen beged, don't. But that's what you might have thought. So you still need the first Russia to tell you that tzitzis overrides shatnez. Now, really, the Gemara is touching on a machlokes now, which is relative to us also, relevant to us, even without all the yevamos over here, and even not about shatnez. What kind of garment is chayv in tzitzis? What kind of garment is chayv in tzitzis? We just said, according to Rabbi Shmuel, cotton is not chayv in tzitzis, because it says beged means wool or linen. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, only a wool garment or a linen garment is chayv in tzitzis, midaraisa. But Rabbana is also going to be masking Rabbana. But if you get a cotton bag, and nowadays you go to the store, you have a choice: wool or linen, wool or cotton. And according to Rabbi Shmuel, the cotton bag is not chayv in tzitzis midaraisa. Oh, it's okay, it's chayv in Rabbana, but it's not chayv midaraisa. Rabbi now is going to. Rabbi argues. Rabbi says that all garments are chayv in tzitzis. Rabbi had a contradiction. Ksiva kanaf min kanaf. One person says v'asnu al tzitzis hakanaf. So he says that kanaf means the kanaf is the garment, and min kanaf he says means the same type of material as the garment, which means that the tzitzis should be the same material as the garment. Uchsiv semu pishtim. Another pasuk says semu pishtim. That's the pasuk we had by us. That's a drash. It's not a Pashup Shat, but it says in the drash, Semo Pishtim after, Gedilim Tasalacha, and the Gemara is reading the word Semo Pishtim next to Gedilim Tasalacha, which is a drash, that the Gedilim, the tzitzis, are also Semo Pishtim. Until now we're talking about the beged, now we're talking about the tzitzis, the strings. So it says here that the strings should be made out of wool or linen. But it's a contradiction, because other pasuk says whatever the garment is made out of, that's the material that the tzitzis should be made out of. And here it says that the tzitzis strings can only be wool or linen. Okay, so how do you resolve the contradiction in the psukim? Semo pishtim pochim bein b'mina bein shelo b'mina. If the tzitzis strings are made out of wool or linen, then it's good for any kind of garment. It's good for cotton, it's good for silk, whatever the garment is, you could put on tzitzis if it's made out of wool or linen. But sharmina, if you have tzitzis strings made out of other materials, b'mina potrin shelo b'mina ain't potrin. If it's the same material as the garment, it's okay. But if it's a different material, it's not good. It means you'd be allowed to make silk tzitzis for a silk garment. And if you have cotton tzitzis, could go on a cotton garment. But you can't put cotton tzitzis on a silk garment or silk tzitzis on a cotton garment. It has to be mina.
30 years ago, we used to have in our synagogue linen, not linen, silk.
Silk garment?
Talit.
Sitalit. And it's strings.
Silk.
Also silk?
So,
It was not wool, for sure.
Wow. The strings themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kosher. It's kosher. It's kosher.
I don't know if we have it.
Interesting.
silk,
You don't see that. You don't see that too much. But
but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
uh,
They can't even veil it, right?
Mhm.
Mechaber mitzvah.
so here it says. So here Rabbi holds that other garments are yes chayiv. You see in his drasha that he says that the other garments also. If you only have semi fishing, we won't talk about sharmina. But he says in his drasha that there is such a thing as other materials also. That's against Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says that only a garment beged. Beged means semi or pishtim, wool or linen. Rabbi says it's something else, that you can have other minim also, and then you can even have the strings of other minim. And the strings of semi pishtim is good. Anything. But the Gemara wants to extract from this Rabbi is going to be like it says in 2 lines, that maybe Rabbi Shmuel also agrees to the part that says a kanaf min kanaf. He's going to say that it has to be the same type as the garment. What the Gemara is going to take out is that wool strings put on the tchelas only put onto a woolen garment, and that's going to avoid the shyness. But I'll get that into a second. But according to Rabbi Shmuel, less like the Rabbi. What are you making that Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rabbi? He doesn't. That's what they're arguing about. According to Rabbi Shmuel, only wool and linen are chayv and tzitzis. According to Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi, any garment is chayv and tzitzis. Midaraisa. But why are you putting them together? They argue on each other. So how could you say that Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rabbi? It's we don't mean to say he holds like Rabbi. He doesn't hold like Rabbi. But there's some diak that he does agree to. Hakanaf min kanaf. That much he agrees to. He agrees to his drasha, but he uses it differently. But Rabbi uses hakanaf min kanaf means that silk and cotton and whatnot, camel hair, everything is going to be chayv and tzitzis, and the strings can be made out of the same garment. That Rabbi Shmuel is not going to agree. He says that the garment only is going to be chayv if it's wool or linen. But that make sure that one point says the garment is only wool or linen. The other pasuk says that it should be the same type. What does that mean? Wool for wool, linen for linen. But don't make wool for linen and linen for wool. Because that's going to be its shalness. And when you make wool for wool, then put the tchelis. He's saying that maybe Rabbi Shmuel holds it's true that a beged of wool and a beged of linen is chayiv. But no shalness. Even though the pasuk says you put tchelis, tchelis is only when you have wool and wool. The beged is wool, the strings are wool. Then put on the blue colored wool also. But there's another kind of tzitzis that's going to be a linen beged, a linen garment, and a linen tzitzis, and then it's not going to be any tchelis. And you don't see that tzitzis overrides shatnez. I will send the pishtim will send low. That's why the pasuk had to tell you that pishtim and semer is extra. That was the whole Russia we did today to say kasv rachman and semer pishtim in the way that it's extra. That the semer pishtim is an extra pasuk that it says by Gedim and Tasla. How does it go? That's extra because we said we know already according to Rabbi Shmuel, we know that it's a garment of semer pishtim because every beggar means semer pishtim. And now it's extra. Now you have the smuchim that feel semer pishtim or pishtim semer. That there's no isser of shatnez by tzitzis. That's the end of the sugya for today. It continues Motzei Shabbos at 7:30. All right, it's too late already. So 7:30 Motzei Shabbos. Just to say a sikkum of the whole daf. The Gemara really is in the middle of a kasha that's going to take us till tomorrow. You have to hold your breath today and tomorrow until we'll get to the end of the kasha. Then there's another 3 daf to hold your breath for the teretz. But here the Gemara wanted to know. We said in a Mishnah that Yibum does not override arayos. That if by marrying his deceased brother's wife, he's encountering a relative that he's not allowed to marry, so he's not allowed to marry. Even though the Yibum does not override the arayos. And the more said a pasuk. That was yesterday's Gemara. There's a pasuk. And the word Allah is also by yevamos Allah. That was a drasha. The brisa went to the trouble to find the brisa, to find the source that it's asa. And then was asking, you don't need a source. Why should it? The whole kasha is, what do you need a pasuk for? Of course it's not, because at most it's only going to be asay dochalosa asay. That's the reason why Yibum should override. But this kind of a losa asay, this is a losa asay sheish b'kares, so you don't find such a thing that a positive commandment overrides such a serious losa asay. And also, this is the law. Also, it takes another two dafna that we only find it. The whole source is only from tzitzis overriding shatnez, and shatnez is only a regular losa asay. It's not going to be a losa asay sheish b'kares. And now the Gemara goes to town to explain this drasha of asay dochal losa asay that says in the pasuk in the Vorim, no, don't wear shatnez, wear tzitzis, and dash and smuchim lav la'olam, and therefore tzitzis override shatnez. The whole Gemara after that was just to say that even Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't dash and smuchim and the rest of the Torah, but here he does because it's Mishnah Torah and it's muchach and mufna. The Gemara tells us also a drasha of smuchim is not relative to us, but the Yibum it is that that you don't make a woman to have to do Yibum if the brother-in-law is a mukashchin, if he has all kinds of boils and he's disgusting, so she doesn't have to marry him. But back to the subject, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't dash and smuchim in the whole Torah because he's not satisfied with the drasha of mechashef lo sechaya next to kol shachevim behem lo yichya. And even though over there there's a smuchim, he doesn't say that's not enough drasha to say that it's chayiv skil. He has a different drasha for that. There will be a donit, but he does dash it in Mishnah Torah because that's where he learns out that anusa sabah and futa sabah is asa, because it says like alek kanaf aviv, pretty close, not mamish close, but pretty close to the din of onesim of ones, and that's how he knows that anusa sabah is asa. So you see that he does dash in smuchim in Mishnah Torah, even though he doesn't the rest of the Torah. The Gemara takes it that's not Mishnah Torah, but it's because of a special reason that it's muchach and mufna. Muchach means that it's evident because it's it's out of context. It's not in the subject over there, and over there it's not the subject of arayos, and therefore it's muchach and mufna because the pasuk lo yigala is extra. And the rest of the Gemara goes to say that he also would agree to tzitzis, that tzitzis also is going to override shatnez because it's also muchach and mufna. Why is it muchach? Because it shouldn't be over here, it shouldn't be pasha shlach. Why is it mufna? That took time to figure out that the pasuk is extra. The fact that it says lo silba shatnez is not extra because you have to know that there's not every time you put on a beggar on you is also more exus that they're not wearing it the regular way. They're allowed to wear they're allowed to put the shatnez on top of them in order to sell it, and therefore it's not extra. You have to have that pasuk also that it is not only to wear, it's also to put on you also. Only a special letter for more exus. But the Gemara says you're right. Lo silba shatnez is necessary, but samuel pishtim is not necessary because we know the shatnez is samuel pishtim because Rabbi Shmuel says that beged always means samuel pishtim. So you don't have to have another pasuk to say samuel pishtim by shatnez, so it's extra. And even though you might think that lavisha, which is more than Allah, maybe that's also even any kind of two meaning. No, you wouldn't think so because shatnez Shavuot would have happened, and we were able to learn out successfully that it's only us if it's samuel pishtim, even if it's lavisha, so therefore it's extra. The last Gemara like pops up, it says once you're mentioning that the word beged means always samuel pishtim, that's enough of a drasha to say because it says that tzitzis is chayiv in samuel pishtim, and it says wear tchelis. Tchelis is always wool because it's not the wool linen, because it says tchelis agam to lashani v'sheish. Sheish is linen. Wool is not. Tchelis is not. So always by saying tchelis goes on to a pishtim beged, you already say that it overrides tzadnus. The Gemara says no. You would have thought that min kanaf, that when it says tzitzis akanaf, it means these are the same material as a garment, and even though it says only a garment of beged of semer pishtim is chayiv, but now it says semer to semer, pishtam to pishtam, and you wouldn't be able to put on tchelis on a beged of pishtam. Kamash malan, that semer pishtam is extra, and therefore you dash in smuchim, and that does tell you that tzitzis overrides shatnez. End of the sugya, end of this sugya for today. Just to point out that this machlokes we had, that according to Rabbi Shmuel, only wool and linen is chayiv d'oraisa, and according to Rava, everything is chayiv d'oraisa. This machlokes comes down till today, and
the old like Rabbi Shmuel that it's only wool.
Is that
Can they most people say the Katan is Rabban, no?
But that's machlokes. It's machlokes. And some hold that Takat is also the right. The Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, they both. So there's people want to be machmir. Just to point out, it's not a question of an avera. It's just a question of doing a bigger mitzvah. That everything's chayv and the chazal's chayv is rabbanan. The question is the chayv of the rice or not? So some people are machmir to wear wool according to all sheets. According to Rava, that's also the rice. It's also the rice. But they want to be machmir to get the rice even according to Rabbi Yishmael.
The Rebbe said that if somebody has an affair with his wife's sister, it's close,
Right.
right? Does he have to divorce his wife?
I don't think so. Why should he have to divorce his wife?
So
I don't think so.
no.
No, that was a key, of course, to have relations with his wife's sister, but I don't think that his wife becomes us. No, I think I'm right. I think so. Okay, Yeshua, everybody. Thank you.
Tomorrow night, 7:30, Mitch.
7:30, Bez Hashem. Thank you.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah, you're coming.
Thank you very much, Rebbe. Have a good Shabbos. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.
I'll be davening inside his house.
Yeah, we'll dive inside.
Okay, got me in. I'll be there 12:30.
Okay, you can bring someone else with you. That would be great.
Okay, I'll try to get somebody else. You got it.
Good. Thank you very much, Rebbe.
Thank you. Good job, everybody. Thank you.
So, Rebbe, you said the time was in good order.